welcome to our second edition of What Now? Today we have a special guest, Sara Hussain from London. I believe you're in England somewhere, Britain, and a friend of Anika. I'm going to say an amazing person, though I just met you. And I'm going to hand it off to Anika to sort of start the co-hosting of our show, and we'll probably go for 40 minutes, 45 minutes, and see where it takes us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Hi, Sara.
Hi.
Welcome, everybody, to the second episode. As you see, we are also learning as we go along. And today, my very dear friend, Sara Rathore, is here. She's joining us from Manchester. So Sara is she's a civil servant. She works for the government, and she's into policy making. So we can pin her down today. No, I'm joking. So all the discussions Sara and I have been having regarding the situation we're all in. And yesterday we had a very enlightening sort of moment when Sara also said something about it's a new age or new world that we are entering. And as we ended our last talk or our last episode that women have to now step in. So I thought who else but Sara would be the best person to bring on board today. And yes, we do understand that everybody's scared. Everybody is fearful. Everybody is angry as well. And we are angry for being, lied at and also deceived by the powers that be. And most of us are also asking ourselves this question, although collectively this time around, that, for example, why we have more nuclear weapons and less ventilators for people are dying. And also why are our frontline heroes and doctors and nurses had to be exposed to such menace of putting their lives in danger for the inadequacies that lie within our healthcare system. So some of us are angry, yet some of us are simply in awe of being present at this moment. A moment of maybe rebirthing, witnessing a new turn and maybe an overturn of this significant event in the history of our world. The Gaia, Mother Earth, as we know it, is sort of reawakening within us. And it's sort of resonant around the world when I speak to women as well. And I believe who else but a woman who has given birth and played an active role in the creation can decipher and discern the current situation and mystery of our times, a time of rebirthing. So welcome, Sara.
Thank you.
How are we feeling today?
I'm feeling pretty amazing, which is quite surprising because I've had 2 to 3 really difficult weeks of coming to term with everything. Some very dark moments where it's just been myself and my thoughts, and recognizing, coming through this whole process to think, actually, it's not doom and gloom. This is something good and this is something positive. And it's been a painful process, if I'm honest. There's been headaches, migraines, feeling sick, IBS, stress, fear, anxiety, worry of death, concern. Is religion real or not real? Like, there's so many conversations going on. Is God real? And watching all the debates going around me, like the noise just everywhere. And I know, I kept, Anika's been keeping me afloat by sending positive messages through every now and again. And we try to focus on like root canal pains that she's got instead, like real life. And I was saying to her, like, if you can survive root canal, labor is nothing. Honestly, it's that bad. And so, but I realized over the past 24 hours that I felt that my body had gone through this like detoxification, if that is a word, of everything that, you know, since 18, 21, what I've been going through life, just mulling along like lots of people, where you dip in faith and you dip out. And so it's been really interesting. But it's been, I'd describe the word as it's painful, like labor, because you don't know what the end product is, right? But you have hope that it's going to be good. And it'll bring joy to your life. So it's like going through that 9 hours or 2 days of labor, like through your body. And then you're given this like newborn child at the end of it, which is the world that we're going to come out with. And to me, it's about, what are we going to do with this world? How are we as mothers going to create this new world that we all find ourselves in? Because I don't think we're going to go back to where we were before. And as much, I think I had about a week to 10 days of really mourning, like my normality, and losing that, like my rights and freedoms. Everything felt it had been stripped away from me. There was lots of anger, but I'm not quite sure who I was angry with. So I was angry at myself, angry at the universe, angry at the creator, if there is a creator, and just having all these conversations and nobody, like in a room, just by myself.
So considering, Sara, that you are into policy making yourself and you play a leading role in especially the Commission for Counter Extremism, and you've gone through a lot of pain and, you know, hate and abuse towards yourself. You've been on the front line and you've taken it all. So when you say that, I don't know, who am I angry at? If, say, for example, somebody asks you the same question, that are you now suggesting that the new world won't have all this hatred around us, and then talking about the civil liberties being taken away from people? What is the connection between, you know, policymakers? How are they going to now, do you think they'll make new policies for people? Because we do say we have freedom of speech, but you know, how much freedom do we have?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because policymakers are still human beings, right? And we all have lives outside of policy as well. And we bring that with us into work. So I think the difference here is there's no historical evidence of how the people that are making the policy have reacted and responded in these situations previously, because policymakers are usually quite young and vibrant people who I find live in a bubble, and it's called the Whitehall bubble, like the London bubble. So, and the rest of the country is going through lots of trauma. You know, there's economic factors that affect us differently, to do with employment, education, access to NHS services. And I think it's a really interesting time for the whole country, for the whole world. You know, we're in like a village, and how we all come through this together is what will determine how happy we are, or whether we still come out more polarized. I think it would be naive to say there will be no hatred in the world. There's always going to be dark and light forces, and that's the way I see it. But it's about sharing that light, sharing that joy, sharing that vision, sharing that experience of having gone through a whole process with other people who may not come from a faith perspective, and that's okay, because we're all in the same universe together. And, you know, we all want the same things. We all want to feel secure, happy, safe, warm, loved. desired, wanted. You know, there's so many things that are going on here. So I think policy is a bit of a cold world. We don't deal with emotions. We have to, you know, government is a machine, and we have to make some really tough decisions. And there are people that will be looking at the impact of these decisions on freedom of speech, freedom of movement, you know, when things do start to restore to a new normality. What will we be doing about these changes that we've introduced now? You know, will that become the new norm?
So, Sarah, I love your reflection. I'm a policy guy too. Macroeconomic policy, happiness policy, well-being policy. So I'm curious, you know, Anika and I have talked about, you know, in a way we're all midwives. I mean, I've never given birth, so I got nothing, right? In terms of, I've never had a root canal. But
you're missing out.
I'm missing out big time. Yeah, I was in a birthing pool with my wife, but that's about as far as I can go, right? But that we're midwives is something new emerging. And you touched on something really interesting as an economist. What I've learned from studying happiness and conducting surveys of people's perceptions of well-being, their feelings, right? That as policy people, you've said something important. We tend to ignore feelings and emotion. We think that everything will be reduced to objective numbers. When we look at the COVID-19 numbers, and we're just guessing. We don't really know what's going on, and we're all kind of in a state of paralysis, as if there's something in the air and we might catch it just by walking under a mist or something. And how do we, in the days forward, in the months forward, one of the thoughts I've had is, why don't we honor people's feelings and emotions, respect them as they are, how people feel about, and ask questions like, when you wake up in the morning, how much love do you feel for yourself? How do you feel about your soul? We never ask those questions in a national survey. And right now we're all sort of sitting self-isolated. I call it an illumination of conscience going on. And for some it's scary. Some are going to commit suicide, sadly, and because they're despairing, and I feel for them, and I think but here we have this wonderful opportunity to pursue maybe a new economic policy paradigm. You know, Cameron tried this, others have tried this, but well-being based on feeling, on relationships, on human experience of the soul, of the heart.
We don't even ask the policy makers, how are they feeling? As Sara was saying, every day you have to keep your feelings out. And I think that would be quite suffocating for them as it is.
I think, so reflecting on my experience in the commission, it was one of the things that I really valued was that I was allowed to bring my whole self to work. And I think that's really important that we recognize that. I think within the civil service, there's lots of change. And it's brilliant that we're seeing that change, that people can bring their whole self to work. Because the face of the civil service is changing, it's diverse. It's super diverse. You know, we have people who are less abled and need more support in different aspects of their lives, but it's allowing them to come to work. We have people who have not just children, but caring responsibilities. So I think one of the things that I was really grateful being in a small team was that the abuse that I got, we had an environment where I could openly talk about that in work and help my colleagues understand that this, you know, I'm navigating between two worlds constantly. I'm Sara Rathore, who's a Muslim, and there's a community that feels ostracized and isolated and under the microscope all the time, and they see me as a traitor for working in this area. But I'm also a civil servant who has values, you know, the civil service values. And ironically, a lot of those values I find are the same as in my faith, you know, and it's bizarre because there's this impression that you can't do the two. And actually we wear lots of different hats as human beings, you know. we're not just Muslim, we're not just Pakistani or Canadian or British.
Mm-hmm.
We're single parents, we're, you know, supporting our partners in a labor pool, having a child, we're supporting our children 150 miles away. So you're multitasking constantly in this ever so complex world. And trying to balance that with the hatred that is going on around us. It just chips away at you all the time. All the time, it just chips away at you. And I think a lot of us were getting to a stage where we were thinking, you know what? Something has to change. Something has to happen to stop this. I want to get off this bus. You know, there was many of us, honestly, there was lots of us feeling that. And, you know, the saying like, I want to go to, where's Narnia? I want to go to Narnia. There is no Narnia. We created, you know, and I'm hoping that post-COVID, Narnia will be what we will create for us, for the next generations, and not just for human beings, but for animals and other species as well, because they equally have a right to be here. And we need to be mindful of that. We need, you know, I think we need to be awoke to everything around us. So there's a bit of a reawakening that's going on.
Beautiful.
And you think, yeah, very nice. So do you think as a woman, women have a role to play now more than ever?
I mean, for me, I always go back to faith. And, you know, when I say faith, I mean like Abrahamic faith, because increasingly I was finding that I find peace in a synagogue. And if I need 10 minutes from work, there's a church across the road. The doors are always open. The lights are not bright. I can just go in, sit down. I don't have to worry about like, I need to cover my hair up and my arms covered, you know, so there's, I mean, and I've had this conversation with a friend before where we think there's going to be like a universal faith that will come out of all of this, of just humanity, where we'll believe in a supreme like power, the universe and the creator, but we'll have shared values of how are we better, how do we look after each other's well-being and emotional senses. So I think for me, I'm hoping that as women, we bring life with men. We can't do it without them. So we always have them with them.
Thank goodness.
And I think that's really important, that we recognize we're in this journey together. And maybe this will readjust a little bit of that imbalance that we've had historically of, you know, where men have sometimes unwillingly found themselves in positions of privilege and benefit over women across. I mean, this is globally, you know, I'm not just talking about the West, I'm talking about Eastern countries as well. I'm really mindful of the women that I met in a recent trip to Pakistan who were saying, you know, we can't do the things that you are entitled to. And that really upsets me. It really upsets me that there's young women who are subjected to conditions that their equivalent men are not. And I want a better world for all of us, not just for me sat at home, you know, safe and well with food and my family. I want that I think there needs to be a shift in that imbalance that we've had. It's long overdue. It needs to happen.
So Sara, would you say this social distancing and isolation is sort of giving us that space to now, as you were saying, come together, you know, with a universal, I won't say just faith alone, these, you know, the universal longing to be, you know, together in union? Do you think that is what is happening or
so
would happen?
Interestingly, I found that when I've been out for my once a day 5-minute exercise, the people that I've met, everybody seems more relaxed. The pace is completely slowed down. We're all smiling to each other and saying, hi, how are you? Hello. So and it's really nice that that's happening, which is unusual because I think before we were just, I need to get to A to B. And we'd lost that connection that you have from, you know, your core from the birthing moment. We'd lost that.
Mm.
Can I reflect on, Sarah, what you just said, and Anika? I work with Indigenous people, First Nations, that's what we call them, from Turtle Island. That's what North America is known as. And, you know, they have, and so do the ancient Chinese kind of philosophies about yin and yang. So I'm always reminded, I speak from a place of privilege. I'm a white male, you know, in the 1%, I'm sure, if not higher. And my wife reminds me that we have to be careful when we speak from a place of privilege. And I think,
Yeah.
I also see that men are struggling with their masculinity. We have people like Jordan Peterson. Some women can't stand the man. I find him intriguing. You know, Mr. Rose on London Real, you know, big tough guys, you know, Alex Jones, you know, not Alex Jones. Anyways, but men who I think are also struggling with, there's a sadness. I think right now we're going through Kubler-Ross said, you know, and a lot of us are going through mourning because of what we've just lost. You know, we've lost our lifestyle in 30 days, what we were accustomed to. And so this is a beautiful wake-up call for all of us to, as Indigenous people would say, all my relations. There's no separation. And they have there's a prophecy that was, and I've shared this publicly, it's about the tree of life, you know, and I love it. We go back to Abraham, or even before Abraham, to Enoch, and those are our grandfathers and grandmothers. And so they talk about this tree of life that still exists, that we have long wandered from its sheltering branches and roots, like it's the Kabbalah, it's like a circle. And but we will awake, it says, one day from this sleep. We were sort of under a spell, maybe, or whatever you want to say it is or was, and we will crawl back to the sheltering branches. And the Indigenous people too speak about the women carry the law of water, the laws of nature in their DNA. So as water becomes, right, the medium by which, interesting that the coronavirus is spread through vapor, water vapor, right? So we have this beautiful moment, I think, of reawakening to these very ancient truths. And we do have actually frameworks upon which America was founded, on the Iroquois Confederacy model. People don't understand what that means. And when I visited them, the women are still in charge. They have a matrilineal structure. The women elect and de-elect the chiefs. The chiefs, there's 49 of them because there's 49 clans. But the real power, the women are sitting on the longhouse, on the y-axis, right? On the horizontal axis, I should say, of the longhouse. And I find that fascinating. And there's a great reverence for the women and holding the yin and yang harmony of their culture. So I get great solace. I'm like, this is the time they've been waiting for, like 10,000 years, where we went and colonized them through our flags and our British laws and our Roman laws. And we've also ignored China, by the way, which has a long, and of course we've talked about, you know, the cradle of maybe Eastern civilization, being Pakistan, being Afghanistan.
And Africa, cradle of humankind.
Yeah. So these, anyways, I digress a bit, but I think this is what gives me hope.
I think just picking up on two of the points that you said, I mean, I understand some men will feel fear. And we see that manifesting in lots of different ways, you know, even like through whether it's feeling they need to attack women, or that they're, you know, push them into certain stereotypes. And you see that, whether it's through the far right or through it's an Islamist or through, you know, any sort of extreme behavior. But it's about having dialogue. There's no need for us to fight against each other. We're in this together. None of us can run away anywhere.
That's right.
You know,
like literally.
Literally.
There's no way.
No. And, you know, I think So I could sometimes be described as a feminazi by some people, and I've tried to tone it down a little bit. I learn a lot from my 16-year-old son who just basically shut me down, and he said, you know, Mum, men suffer from emotional stress as well. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, wow, do you know, I hadn't even thought of that, because I was so like, I'm such a victim in my own womanhood. I'm deprived of everything and denied of everything. And I think listening to him about his mental health and having those open, honest conversations with them has been a changing culture for us, because my parents never spoke to me about these things. You know, when I didn't grow up with any male siblings. So for me, it's been a huge learning curve that actually their fears, their emotions need validating as well. I can't just say, no, I'm sorry, you have male privilege. No, and that's it. It just doesn't work. So it's about understanding the other. And I think that's something that comes from within, like within motherhood. And, you know, the universe is our mother. That's the way I see it. The universe has got it within her or him to say, I'm hurting. You need to stop. And I think that's what's going on here.
Definitely.
Beautiful.
So the creator is hurting with us. He or she is suffering with us. Yeah, I believe so as well.
And even I think within our inside, you know, if we all asked ourselves, like Mark said before, do we wake up and ask ourselves, how loved do I feel today? And how much love do I want to go out and give and share? We don't. We didn't have time. You know, it's almost like a basic life skill that we'd forgot. You know, a mother.
And I think we were also scared of being categorized as vulnerable, because if you are, you know, you talk about this fluff stuff, you know, love and all that, people think you are weak. I've been told this so many times. But what's wrong with that? You know, why can't we just feel this vulnerability we have as human beings? Because we need love. We need all this care from others all the time.
But there's a beauty about vulnerability, right?
Yeah.
There's something beautiful about it as well. We don't have to fear it. You know, I
Sarah,
think,
can you reflect on you? Sorry, I'm interrupting you, but you said something profound to me, at least, as you know, our excuse before was we don't have time. What does that actually mean in the context of now?
I think when we would say we don't have time, it's deflection from reality, from not asking ourselves how loved do I feel? Do I feel happy? Am I happy? What is happiness? And so to deflect from that, we make ourselves busy and say, I don't have time. And now we have no excuse. Now we have time. So all those thoughts that we've trapped and just blanked out, like left over there, are sat right here. And you have to deal with it. And it's a painful process. But, you know, we have people who've got wisdom, who are talented, who've got experience, who've got hindsight, who are connected to the earth, who are connected to spirituality. And we all need to come together to produce something beautiful.
Wonderful. So, Anika, if we may, that I think it goes to our, you know, our sort of concluding thoughts, which is so, as you said, here we have this amazing moment of looking in the mirror ourselves at who we are, which I would quickly say, you know, love is who we are. We are all creations of the same God in the image of love. I don't care about any religions with that respect. But then how, say 6-8 months down the road, how are we going to organized in the collective, in the spirit of cooperation, in the spirit of relationship? What do you see as what we will see emerging in policy and how we engage each other in the economy? What do you see?
Do you want me?
Yeah, I'll quickly add up, and then you can respond to both our questions. It's not a question, it's a thought, a reflection as well. And we can all think about it, that the new world, if we create a new world now, like, restart the world, how open and ready are we to accept that new world and think anew, recreate everything and accept it and say, this is it. This is our new reality now.
I think we don't have a choice, do we? Because there are forces greater than, us human beings with all our qualifications and technology and everything, where this powerful force, whatever it is, of everything, can just say stop. And there is nothing we can do. What's going to happen in 6 months' time? Well, 6 months ago, we couldn't have predicted we would be in this situation. So I think there's a little bit of like what Mark's doing is his old self coming through, which is thinking about 6 months ahead. And you know what? Why are we not living in the moment for today and just enjoying the fact that I'm alive, I can see, I can touch, I can breathe. I have friends and family who I love. We've got food. But also remember that there's people who don't have that, and that's where policy needs to change. It can't just be about us anymore, because what happens so far away impacts the rest of us. And when we see conflict, whether it's, weapons of mass destruction not being found and millions of people being displaced and made homeless, this has an impact, and it leaves a footprint of trauma, emotional trauma. And we need to take this time right now to heal from that, because
Beautiful.
yeah, we've seen so much trauma, from Hiroshima to Vietnam to the Falklands to Syria, Iraq, Yemen, refugees drowning in Italy. When I think of those things, I don't want to go back to that world. Do any of you want to go back to that world?
No, thanks.
No. Yeah.
No.
Beautiful.
So
Very nice.
Here's to 6 months where we need to make a promise. We will do what we can to share love, compassion, be kind, and make a better world.
Beautiful,
Thank you,
Sara. Thank you so much.
That was
You're welcome.
fantastic.
Yes. Stay well. And
Thank you.
keep
Thank
talking
you.
about these things.
Yeah.
And we want to have your son on our next show. Just kidding.
Definitely. But thank you.
Thank
I
you.
know.
Have a beautiful Sunday. What's
Thanks.
left of it.
You too.
Bye.
Bye, Sara.